Etymology Nerd made a video about Toki Pona for Christmas. Let's give it a look.
You know how Christmas technically means Christ Mass and holiday technically means holy day, but you don't think about that when you're actually saying the words? Well, that's because of a process called lexicalization, where you forget the origins of a phrase over time and just start treating it as a word by itself.
Yeah, awesome. This is a very good basic explanation of lexicalization.
It's kind of like how when I say Grand Central Station, you probably think of the famous train terminal and not the fact that I basically just said Big Middle Station. And in this sense, lexicalization is useful because it helps us quickly understand certain expressions.
I think this kind of underexplains why lexicalization happens in language, but only a little bit, and I'll explain why later. Let's see how he ties Toki Pona into this.
But there is a school of philosophy that doesn't like lexicalization because it makes us less intentional about the words we're using. For example, the world's smallest constructed language, Toki Pona, should theoretically have a lot of lexicalization because it only has 137 base words that you frequently have to combine to make complex concepts. However, the community of Toki Pona speakers specifically tries to avoid the phenomenon because they want to meditate over each individual word they're using.
Okay, so he's close, but not quite correct about why Toki Pona speakers avoid lexicalization. Toki Pona speakers don't actually want to meditate on each individual word they're using. They just don't want the lexicon to grow. Lexicalization is actually a much broader term in linguistics than Etymology Nerd describes in his video. Like other linguistic terms, its usage differs between linguists, but it typically refers to the creation of a new lexical unit by any means, not just compounding. So loaning a word from a different language could be called lexicalization, and coining a new word could also be called lexicalization. What makes lexicalization what it is that a new lexicalized phrase needs to be a new entry in the lexicon. That means that when you write a dictionary that has every word in a language in it, it should include all lexicalized phrases and words, be they coup de grace, a loan word, brainwashing, a calque, or grok, an a priori coinage. In Toki Pona spaces, the term is usually used to refer to what Etymology Nerd describes in this video, the lexicalization of compound phrases. What's important to Toki Pona speakers here is that when one lexicalizes a phrase, the size of the lexicon increases. And as Etymology Nerd said, our language is known for having only 137 words, give or take. Toki Ponists avoid lexicalization to keep the lexicon of the language small, not to meditate on the meanings of words. Some individual speakers may find philosophical meaning in meditating on the meanings of words when avoiding lexicalization, but frankly, when I planned on meeting up with a Toki Pona speaking friend at Grand Central Station, I'm pretty sure I described it as Ma Grand Central, which also, that's not a very good example of lexicalization in my opinion. Obviously, it depends on the language, and I recommend checking out Wisdom Sits in Places by Keith H. Basso if you're interested in learning about alternative perspectives, but my main point here is that proper names are more associated directly with the specific thing that they represent, and aren't a word that can be used to describe various objects. Black pepper is my personal go-to example of a lexicalized phrase. Pepper by itself refers to this fruit, and various cultivars of it and its closely related family members. Black pepper doesn't refer to a black version of this fruit. It refers to an entirely different plant that is used somewhat differently in cooking. Why does lexicalization happen in language anyway? It's a good question. The lexicon of any language, except maybe Toki Pona, is a giant mess of shifting and changing meaning. Toki Pona's might be more like a tiny mess. Large and stable lexicons are constantly shifting, and lexicalization is a natural process that maintains the size of a lexicon as older words fall out of fashion. Like, nobody uses the term theorbo anymore, except for antiquarian musicians maybe. But in exchange for that word, the word girl boss has entered our modern lexicon. Okay, let's see what Etymology Nerd has to say next.
So, while the idea of a friend is usually expressed as Yan Pona, meaning good person, if you lexicalize that and treat it as a single term, then the word for a bad friend would be a bad good person, which doesn't really make any sense, so you're supposed to consider a different way to articulate that.
This is a classic example that's been used a lot to explain why lexicalization is bad in Toki Pona, and also to explain the so-called benefits of learning Toki Pona. I think it kind of misses the mark, though. I'm skeptical that Toki Pona removes the ability to say bad friend. It just forces you to describe what you mean. A lot of people may just continue saying Yan Pona to describe the person in order to avoid having to examine their relationship further with the knowledge that there cannot be a bad good person. Is this really better than saying that somebody is a bad friend? I don't think so. Also, the usage of Yan Pona for friend is indeed a pretty common lexicalization due to its prevalence in learning resources and its usage as an example, such as in this Etymology Nerd video. Why is a friend a good person? There are plenty of good people who are not my friends, and I like to surround myself with a group of evil, terrible people who cause harm to others, but they're nice to me. They're my friends. That's why I say Yan Poka instead of Yan Pona, most of the time. It matches up much closer with what I mean by friend than Yan Pona. Okay, what else, Etymology Nerd?
Or what if the friend is your pet?
What?
It should be more grammatically correct to say Sawali Pona, meaning good animal.
Wait, why would that be grammatically correct? What do you mean? What do you mean if the friend is your pet? I've never heard somebody say, my pet is my friend. Maybe I don't associate enough with dog owners, though.
But if you had lexicalized the phrase, then you might accidentally call your pet a human.
Oh, I think I get what's going on here. This isn't really a good example of lexicalization because the meaning of the lexicalized phrase is the semantic space of an English word, which has a very complex and pretty variable meaning depending on the speaker. If you're just speaking Toki Pona without using complex concepts from a different language, you won't accidentally call your pet a human. The problem here would go far beyond lexicalization. It means that the speaker doesn't actually know Toki Pona. Okay, overall I would say I enjoyed Etymology Nerd's video, and I think most of the information in this video is close enough to accurate to be useful for a general audience, who probably isn't paying super close attention. But it is definitely inaccurate enough for me to consider parts of it false. I think this video is based on the Toki Pona's community concept of lexicalization, not the concept is used in the wider field of lexical semantics. So the beginning is a little misleading. I enjoyed the video. Eat a good fish.